Welcome, Pitt fans, to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I am your host, JJ Kitchen, and today was the first day on the South Side. Finally back. Fall camp is officially open. And before we get into today's topics, I think it's that Pat Narduzzi talked today about the football team. Please, again, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Things are going to certainly start heating up as fall camp is finally here. Position battles, Pat Narduzzi's comments, player interviews coming. But more importantly, even to all the ACC fans, please like the video, subscribe, and please leave a comment below. I love the chatter. I love answering questions. You guys have been phenomenal. The channel's growing at a rapid rate because of each and every one of you, the ACC fans, Big 12 fans, SEC fans, and of course, Pitt fans. So today was a big day. Report day was on Tuesday. First day of camp actually on the field today on a Wednesday. And it was a good day for a number of players that Pat Narduzzi talked about today. But the first thing he really did after the practice was meet with the media. And some of the questions that he was talking about that he received was, one, what does it look like in this year's team? One of the questions that was brought up is, you look at your team now, you do have a number of different pieces, but you come off a 5-game winning streak last year. Does that provide momentum going into the season? And the response that he really gave that personally I loved was the fact that what happened last year doesn't reflect on what's going to happen this year. And what happened last year was a different team, different bunch of guys. This is a whole different crew, and these guys are more motivated than ever. And speaking of the motivation, he talked about the new guys that are here, but also, too, one of the questions that was really brought up, I think Noah Hiles actually brought that up, was the fact that Pitt, in the ACC preseason rankings, it was picked to finish tied 6th with Duke. Obviously, it's a big surprise to a number of different people because of the recent success that Pitt has had in the last 2 seasons. Pat Narduzzi, of course, as you can imagine, a guy who's very honest, blunt about it, said, look, it's the same thing year in and year out. Doesn't matter how well we do, doesn't matter what we do, we're placed in a certain place in the pecking order. And he said, look, there's no 2 divisions this year. So he said, when you're in the top 6, it's almost like they're saying we're going to finish 3rd in the Coastal again. He goes, which they've had us every single year. And honestly, personally, I think, they've had Pitt at one point 4th or even 5th. And in the last 8 years that Pat Narduzzi has been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers, he has beaten the odds of where they're supposed to finish 7 out of the 8 years. The only time he didn't beat expectations was in 2017 when Pitt went 5-7. It was a down year, but obviously they had a lot of momentum going into the offseason by beating number 2 Miami to end the year at Heinz Field. One of the things he also talked about is just that's a motivating factor for this team. There's a bunch of guys that he would consider as veteran leadership. Talked about the veteran leadership on the defense. Obviously, David Green being the guy that I would say is really the stone-cold leader when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. One of the videos that came out recently just after practice was, really David Green hyping the guys up. And he talked about how, the quote, I think they'll be really for this year, obviously, besides we, not me, which is a staple of this program going forward. But the fact is, though, teams win games, families win championships. And that's the culture that really Pat Narduzzi has built on the South Side with Pitt, and as he's been able to develop each and every single year that he's been at Pitt. Also, he talked about how this team in general, not just David Green, but also Devin Danielson, a guy that's on the middle, multiple different guys. Dayon Hayes at defensive end. He's going to be a guy that steps up this year. Tyler Bentley, how he's talked about how he's grown. That was a big aspect of the leadership that's on that defense. Obviously, he expects a big year out of Bengali Kamara. Bengali had a heck of a season. They had a team period where they had basically, it was going into a passing situation, more of like 7-on-7, but being able to get everybody out there on a controlled basis. Bengali, he said, really just tore up the offensive line. And he talked about how, Branson Taylor, a guy that's been tremendous, especially towards the end of last year. He said, hey, it's your first day. Everyone's knocking off all the dust. He says Bengali came out swinging. And, when you look at the offensive line, for example, people would expect at this point a guy like Branson Taylor to build off of what he did last year to give him the starting left tackle spot. Well, he said, in reality, between left tackle and left guard, you're going to have Ryan Bayer and Jacoby being able to compete at the left guard position. And then you're going to have them be able to compete at the left tackle position as well. Ryan Bayer is going to work at both. He said he did mention that Ryan Jacoby would work at both as well. Me personally, I would be shocked to see Jacoby bump out to left tackle. I think he's really made for being in the guard position. I think Ryan Bayer is a future star in the making. I think he's going to get on the field regardless this year. I think this year he'll probably be at the left guard position. I think that's really where he's going to be at this point. I'd be shocked if he bumps out because Branson Taylor's there, but there's going to be competition. The one thing that Pat Narduzzi has loved to this extent and this football team as you go in, and he talked about how each and every year that the talent on this team has gotten better. And he recently mentioned that in the Adam Bredeman podcast, The Next Man Up, just the talent level since when he got here in 2015 to where we are in 2023, there's a big difference in the talent level that's on this roster. And I think that when you look at the offensive line, that's a grade A position that you look at the talent level that's there. Obviously, we talked about, Jacoby that's going to be there, Bayer that's going to be there, Branson Taylor. Obviously, you're going to have Jake Cradle at the center position. And there's going to be young guys that step up too. I think that this group in general, some of the freshmen that are coming in there, they've been opening up eyes recently. At right guard, I would think Blake Zubovic is going to be a guy that competes for right guard, the right guard position. And obviously right tackle, the guy he actually made first team all ACC preseason is Matt Gonsalves. That's a guy that's going to be able to really build off of what he did last year. But guess what? Nobody's safe on this offensive line when it comes to being replaceable because of the talent level that really has been there through the entire way. And I think that has to give a lot of credit to a guy, for instance, when it comes to recruiting, is the offensive line in general. Pat Narduzzi's done a good job. And I think when you look at this whole entire staff, really just not one guy, but really all the staff, when it comes to recruiting every certain area and every certain position, it's really a group effort. Just like recently how Yasin Willis committed to Pitt recently. Tim Salem had a lot to do with that. I think when you look at this group and the offensive side of the ball, he talked about obviously the competition at offensive line. Obviously, we look at this point right now, a quarterback. Phil Dracovic looks to be the starting quarterback for Pitt this year. But Christian Valar, a guy that's going to be very competitive in terms of being able to push Phil Dracovic. I think Phil gets it because one of his talent level, but more so because of his knowledge of the offense. I think his third year being with Frank Signetti, 2 at Boston College, now this year, being able to get into this system. People obviously remember the 2 years he was with Frank Signetti. 2020 was a breakout year. Potentially, people put Phil Dracovic in the range of, is he a potential first-round pick? You had the analogies between Ben Roethlisberger and Phil Dracovic because of the size, the athleticism, and the arm strength. He's got really everything that you're looking for, but what you're looking to see now is him to really put it together. And I think that's where he's at this year in terms of his career and wanting to go to the next level. We need to see that next step. We need to see that progression. Does he put it all together this year? And does he really put Pitt over the top? And I think in college football, that's really what you're looking for. The best teams out there, they have the best quarterbacks. Teams like North Carolina with Drake May, that's going to be a very competitive team this year. Cade Klubnik with Clemson, that's another guy. Clemson's obviously favored to win the ACC, which makes sense because of the talent level on that roster. Obviously, Jordan Travis, the quarterback from Florida State. We've heard plenty of noise today between Florida State, looking for, the potential to try to leave the ACC. Again, like I told you guys before, they're not leaving anytime soon. They're trying to get more money. But as Eric McElwain said today, FSU needs to worry about trying to win the conference first before they try getting out of the league, which is I thought a pretty good comment by him, to say the least. So, but you look at it, again, offensive line, very competitive, a lot of depth. Borbley has done a hell of a job developing, recruiting. You got to love the group that's there. I think that when you look at this group from an aspect of the depth-wise, offensive line, quarterback, obviously you still have Nate Yarnell there as well, a guy that's going to compete this year. I think it's going to be those 3 guys. Pat Narduzzi talked about that on the Adam Bredeman podcast too. When's the last time you saw the quarterback room be this deep in terms of Phil Dracovic, Christian Valar, and then obviously Nate Yarnell? And again, to Christian, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong. I know you guys will be watching this. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, again, always just reach out to me. I got to correct it somehow. I've heard it back and forth, whether it's Mario Lemieux or Valar or Velu or whatever. But again, I'll try my best to pronounce it correctly all this year. I know it'll change up quite a bit. So again, you look at this crew between the offensive line, quarterback, then you go to running back. Obviously, your starting running back is going to be Rodney Hammond. That's the guy who really was the bell cow in terms of what the bowl game was against UCLA. He got MVP. I think he's going to build off of that. And to be quite honest with you, I think Izzy Abanikanda may have been back this year if Rodney Hammond didn't get hurt in that first game against West Virginia, because Rodney Hammond was on a tear in that first game when he was taking on the West Virginia Mountaineers in the backyard brawl. Obviously, you're going to have, Pat Narduzzi talked about Sibo Flemister, a guy that really turned it on towards the end of the year, especially in the Miami game for the last game. But obviously, too, Derek Davis, the returning son, obviously from the hometown hero from Gateway, transferred back home from LSU. I'm excited to see him. I think he's going to be a tremendous running back. His size, his athleticism, his speed, his physicality, I think he's going to bring so much versatility to the room. So really, you're looking at guys like that, 3 guys, and then Daniel Carter. Daniel Carter is a guy who can really step up this year and provide a lot of value to this team. And let's see here if I had it here. He had a couple more comments. Yes. And then also, too, tight end. You look at the tight end room, okay? Gavin Bartholomew, I think he makes that jump back up again. Me personally, I think just last year being the first year in the offense, you saw those sparks, but then you also had the average quarterback play, which kind of put it in back and forth, especially when you're in a pro-style offense. You're reading your progressions as you go through. I think just Keaton Slovis lost a lot of confidence, especially after his concussion. Personally, me, I don't think he was back 100%. I think he was still trying to regain a lot of his confidence. He was never able to do it. But he's one of those guys, man, that you look at it right now, he'll be able to step up. He'll get back to where he was in the 2021 season, where I think, he was tremendous in the last year of the Mark Whipple offense, more of an H-back than he was a tight end. He's really trying to get to that tight end level, which I think he does get back to this year. Obviously, too, you have Malcolm Epps, the guy who was just recently brought in, the USC transfer, a guy that's 6'6", 6'7". You're kind of looking at the Lucas Crawl body type, frame, very physical. You put him anywhere near the end zone, it's kind of a jump ball at that point. And obviously, too, you have another returning guy in Carter Johnson, one of the most improved players that came out of spring camp this year. You'll love to hear that room. And obviously, too, he brought up Jake Rendes. So when you look at that room, you have 4 tight ends at this point that you really feel good about. I think personally, me, it's probably going to be Bartholomew number 1, Carter Johnson number 2, and then Malcolm Epps number 3, because he is learning the offense still. Also, one of the guys I wanted to bring up that I've actually heard a lot about from spring camp as a freshman. Guys, when you look at freshman offensive linemen, it is extremely tough as a freshman to get on the field. And I said you probably wouldn't see time until year 2 or year 3. From spring camp, this guy made a lot of noise, and that's freshman BJ Williams. From the time you heard about him in the spring camp to where he is now in fall camp, in my opinion, I think he's probably going to be on the 2 deep, to be quite honest with you. From the things that I've heard out of there, he's a very physical offensive lineman. One of the things they talked about whenever they recruited him, I was a little shocked that only Memphis was one of the schools that really pursued him the hardest, because he is that physical type of run blocking offensive lineman. And then, especially in the spring camp, he showed he's got pretty good footwork, especially when he's working with Borbley in terms of being able to show the pass protections. He was really working at center a lot. Again, guys, a freshman offensive lineman, and then possibly on the 2 deep at center. I mean, your football IQ has to be off the map, and especially just coming from high school to college football in the Power 5. Guys, that's a feat. that is extremely difficult to even put it into retrospect. I mean, year 2 for an offensive lineman's hard, but year 1 and you're coming in as a true freshman and you're getting noticed this quickly and potentially you're going to be on the 2 deep is mind-blowing. So watch out for a guy like BJ Williams. Then you look at the wide receiver room. Pat Narduzzi talked about really your first year, your top two guys, Konate, Mumfield, and then you have Bub Means, the two guys returning from last year. Personally, I think this room isn't very deep right now because you're going to rely on the guys that are pretty much freshmen. And that's really what we've heard today. So you had Konate, Mumfield, Bub Means. Obviously, you have Dejon Reynolds, the transfer, the 4-star transfer from Florida. I expect him to turn up and to become that number 3 wide receiver just because of experience. He does have that 1 year of experience. But don't be shocked. He talked today about how Zion Fowler, first day at camp, he had a hell of a day today. We'll see how that goes for the next 2 or 3 weeks, as sometimes those guys start to hit a wall because really you're installing your offense. And it's a pro-style offense with Frank Cignetti. It's not easy, guys. It's a very difficult offense to learn. So I'm really interested to see how these freshmen do. But he talked about during the spring camp where you saw a guy like Lamar Seymour and Izzy Polk. Those two guys were extremely good in terms of the spring camp. We'll be excited to see what they do and develop. But then along with Zion Fowler, Lamar Seymour, and Izzy Polk, you have Kenny Johnson. That's probably one of the better athletes that when you brought him in here, he was obviously, they thought he was a Penn State lean. Pitt was lucky enough to get him. I am extremely excited to see what Kenny Johnson does because he has that level of potential. You saw the videos when he was coming in here, even with the 7-on-7s, a guy that's aggressive and goes to get the football. A guy that goes up to get it. Doesn't allow the football to come to him. He goes and gets it. That's what you want to see at the Power 5 level with these wide receivers. They're aggressive. They're fast. They're big. I mean, that's Taekwon Underwood's calling card is really the big, fast wide receivers and physical. They're going to go after it and get these guys. So, again, you look at that really from a perspective of what the offense is going to look like. I'm excited to see what the wide receiver room does because of the limited experience. They certainly have a lot to prove. It's one of the things that we've talked about really all spring, all summer. Clearly, Pat Narduzzi talked about it today. 2 of those guys, at least, and potentially 3, are going to play this year, especially as a true freshman. So it'll be interesting to see which one of those guys do jump up, which one of those guys continues to learn this difficult offense in terms of the pro style. What does that look like? And then obviously, too, you're looking on the defensive side of the ball. Your Devin Danielson's in the middle. Your David Greens, Tyler Bentley, DeAndre Joels, Elliott Donald in the middle. Those guys will completely fight it out to try to see who gets the playing time. Sean Fitzsimmons, a guy that should be, he's probably going to see a lot of playing time just in terms of the spring camp that we heard about. He had a hell of a spring camp, made a lot of noise. He's progressed very quickly for a guy who went from a true freshman, now a redshirt freshman, and certainly getting his way in there. And then you obviously, too, on your outside, you got Samuel Okanola, you got Dayon Hayes, you got Nakai Johnson, Nate Temple, Bam Brema. And again, I think Elliott Donald, too, can slip outside because of how aggressive he is, athletic ability. You're looking at the defensive line. It's never rebuilding. It's reloading. They just reloaded what they did. Linebacker room, Bengali Kamara, a guy that should have a big year this year. You're looking to see how he continues to develop. Pat Narduzzi said today he had a very big day. Again, we talked about disrupted an entire period with the offensive line. So, again, get the offensive line facing one of the best defenses in college football. The offensive line will be ready. And, of course, the defense will be ready with being able to face this offense. Then you have Solomon DeShields, Shane Simon, Brandon George. Those guys are being able to fight for positions, especially in the linebacking core. We'll see what Kyle Lewis does this year. The group continues to churn out. We continue to see the linebacking room really become almost what we thought was a liability, but the recruiting has shown the potential is there. Now it's time to put potential with the hard work and to put the results on the field. And, of course, the defensive back room, plenty of experience. Obviously, at the cornerback positions, you have Marquez Williams, MJ Devonshire, AJ Woods, Rylan Gandy. Those guys, I mean, those are just 4 of those guys right now that they're going to be on the football field, especially at the cornerback position. You love the depth that's there. Okay, obviously, Rashad, you have Rashad Battle. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to play there at the cornerback position. So 5 guys, especially when they go to their Delta packages. So you have depth at the cornerback position. And then you look at the safety position, Donovan McMillan. You have Stephon Hall. You have Javon McIntyre, PJ O'Brien. You're looking at that crew. At this point, Pat Narduzzi said today, Javon McIntyre looks to be the number 1 to safety at this point in terms of knowing what the defense is. The safety position in Pitt's defense, especially the field safety position, playing to the field. That's your position that, Damar Hamlin played. It's all about knowledge. Eric Hallett did an incredible job the last 2 years. Tremendous football player, now playing in the National Football League. Again, the defensive back room is full with talent. So, guys, it's an exciting time. Pitt football is back. It's good to see where everything is going here as it continues to grow. It'll be fun to see where things go from here on out. Of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment on the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think about Pat Narduzzi's comments? Which positions do you think are going to be the ones that you think will be the most fun with the position battles? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Again, guys, thank you for supporting the channel. Again, as always, hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys.